be live. Hello, Amy Julia Becker. Nice to see you.
Hi, Adrienne. Nice to see you.
So glad you're here. This is the first time I have been live on YouTube and Facebook at the same time from StreamYard.
Well, how exciting. I'm glad to join you.
It's very exciting. And the neat thing about, and you can also do live on Instagram too, but I didn't want to push my luck. We're supposed to have Kate Swenson joining us. She has a little fellow with autism and then 3 small children. And as you know, like I do, 3 small children it's a lot,
It's a
particularly
lot.
bedtime.
hmm
I've just tricked someone. We're living on the old time change, Amy Julia, and everybody that follows me knows I do this for a long time. We so I can get Amos to bed an hour earlier.
Wow. That's impressive. Yeah,
It's been
my
4 years.
body is definitely still on the old time change, but that has not been what my clocks have been telling me.
Well, I like to live at the old time at night, so you go to bed early, and the new time in the morning.
It's a really great way to do it. I just used to curse the legislators who didn't take away daylight savings. I just remember, especially because it always comes during election week, where you're just
Uh,
like, you know what? I will vote for anyone who does not make me mess with the clocks this week.
See, I love it. It's like
Apparently,
it's
I
like
think
a
you found
holiday
the
for me. I'm like, I when the children were little, I would have them. I one year I had them in bed at 5:30, and I was
That's amazing.
downstairs all by myself. I was
Yeah,
like, this
but
is
see,
great.
mine just woke up so early, and then they just were waking.
Oh,
I
and I
don't.
don't care. Who cares about that? If you bother me, you go back to bed.
That was my problem is they didn't go back to bed. So I apparently did not have quite enough of like an iron fist or something.
That's the only thing I've ever had success at. And I've
It's
just
the
put the word
morning.
at. No, I would. Blair was like 2.5.
hmm
She could get out of the crib. I would leave the television on, food out, her table set up, and don't you wake me up.
Okay, well, that does seem like a pretty good setup for them. So
Yeah.
yes, all
The
right,
TV being on is key.
yeah, yeah. Well, my kids are now 19, 17, and 14. So I missed your wisdom, but we will
Oh,
hopefully
sorry.
be passing it along to many others.
Well, so you have 19, 17, and 14. What do I have? I have 19, 18, 16, and almost 12.
Very similar.
There you go. Introduce yourself to everybody and tell them
Sure.
where they can find you.
So I'm Amy Julia Becker, and I have a name that no one else seems to have. So Amy Julia Becker is the way to find me, amyjuliabecker.com or that handle and so forth in social media land. And I have a 19-year-old with Down syndrome, and then 2 typically developing teenagers who are both like a boy who's a senior, girl who's a freshman, and our daughter with Down syndrome is our oldest. So she is home with us, but goes to a local college program for students with intellectual disabilities.
And when did she graduate from finish high school?
She finished high school like a year and a half ago, so 2024.
Okay.
And at that point, we were actually moving to a new town, and the new town said, look, we've got 2 options for these transition years. One would be a transition academy with a small group of kids who are, really just focused on kind of workplace skills and life skills. And the other is a slightly more, not completely academic setting, but where they're still like auditing classes and doing, yeah, more work that's a little more academic in nature, which actually was her desire. And it's a bigger program, draws
Okay.
from multiple towns in our area. So that's been, I mean, at first it was hard. Like it was a hard transition, just I think in the sense that leaving high school is a hard transition for a lot of
Yeah.
kids.
Yeah.
And it's gotten to be a really great place for her.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Well, that's nice. Yeah, because I was thinking like in North Carolina, it's basically 22. Amos can stay
Yeah.
until he's whatever,
Yeah,
20.
and that's, I mean, so like, so I'm in Connecticut, and we also, it is until 22, but she wouldn't stay in, like, there aren't, people don't stay in their high school until they're 22. They
Oh,
stay kind of under the umbrella of the town,
right.
but it's either like a transition program within the town. I mean, I'm sure I'm maybe misspeaking. There might be towns that do actually literally stay in the high school, but the people I know, which is kind of throughout the state, it's like there's a transition program in town, or in our case, you've got 30 something kids from all over the state of Connecticut who are being bused to this college where there's basically a partnership between these towns and the school in terms of providing a program that's a more for some of them it's a pathway into like getting college credits. For
Right.
others, like Penny, she's auditing classes, so she is doing academic work, she's doing some like actual job placement work, and then she's getting, communication therapy and having lots of experiences with peers, etc.
Mhm. Well, and you know the town I'm from because it's actually your hometown.
I know, which is so weird and great. I do know.
Eatonton,
Yeah.
very small place. And I grew up in Rocky Mount, so I'm just about an hour and 15
Yeah.
minutes. But we've been here now for 20-ish years, 21 years. And I say oftentimes having a child with a disability in a small town. One of the benefits, my co-authors, Kate Swenson, who I hope will join us, and Carrie Cariello, we all live in really different places, but I'm the only one that it's like we have the public school system program
Yes.
and we have nothing else.
Yeah.
So it has to work, right? Because there is no other option. It's like I
Yeah.
have a car that's stick shift, and if you want to get to work, you're going to drive the stick shift car. Not like, well, we have a taxi and Uber
Yeah.
um and so that has been to me good, but I don't know anything different. So
Yeah,
full
no, and Penny, until we moved, and we're still in a small town, we were in a tiny town, and it was the same thing where it was like they they didn't have the resources in the town to have like a whole separate special education department. It was like, well, she's going to be in the classroom. We got to figure this out. And I do think that ultimately was really good for her and for her peers and for everyone. And thankfully that was because, and it sounds like this has been true for you as well, like people wanted it to work, I mean, but there
right.
was very much a sense of there aren't other options, so we're going to make it
Right.
work.
Right. I wish there were more. Yeah, it's not perfect, but it has been good so far. Amos is in a traditional fifth grade classroom and has three different teachers, and he also has an EC teacher classroom where he goes for pull out, but he
Hmm.
mainly does in oh yes, Kate just texted me and said I thought it was she's Midwest. She thought it was her time, but she'll be on in a minute. And
Okay.
it what I love most about it is that his peers are getting to know him and like really getting to know him in a way that I felt like when I knew what I knew about disabilities, and your experience might have been different than
Right.
mine. But I went to a small private school. I didn't know anybody with a disability. And I would say Amos has like they're like Amos is my friend, and Amos is not a good friend. He, takes a lot more than he gives, but they know Amos in a way that's not just showing up for Special Olympics one
Yeah.
day a year.
Right.
And
Yeah, no, and that's, I mean, I have to
you're
say,
such an advocate that I say that because I feel like you do such a good job of wanting that type of thing.
I do. I mean, and I just really, I guess because I had a similar situation to you, which was I really did not have people with disabilities and especially intellectual disabilities in my life until Penny was born. And I really felt like I was the one who'd been missing out. And,
Mm.
and not to say that she doesn't benefit from having typically developing peers. She totally does. But
Right.
I also really felt like, wait, why have I not known people like you for my entire life? Because there's something that you're able to give to me that I really need. And I believe that and I don't mean by that like that Penny should
Right.
have been allowed, or I mean, she had no interest in taking AP physics. Like that's not appropriate for
Right.
her. And like the kids who should be taking AP physics should do that together. So I don't think
Right.
but at the same time, if like our schools are completely segregated when it comes to intellect, there's really like a loss for everyone. And so
Mhm.
creating, especially those social environments where kids can grow up and actually be like, no, no, that's my friend. Like, and I
Right.
asked someone the other day, like, what is, who's a professor, like, what's the cost of creating communities of belonging? And he was like, time, a cup of coffee, a ticket to a movie, like friendship, like that's the cost. It's not, that's all we're talking about is like people actually giving to each other. And that starts, I think for our kids, it can start at least really early on. And I hope that is more and more the case.
Well, and I think as you, before we jump into this guardianship conversation, it's like, how do you, if I think now, if one of my children, my big three children, were going to have a child and they said, Mom, um, our child is going to have a disability,
Hmm.
that I wouldn't be scared,
Right.
and I'm so thankful for that. And I wouldn't feel sad. I would say, boy, this is going to be hard, as
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
what hard looks like. But hard things, good things are hard. People run marathons. It does not appear easy. I do not do it. But
Me neither.
clearly good comes from that,
Yeah.
right? Like hard things are good. And I'm so thankful to know that now. And I'm thankful that my children know it and that Amos's peers know it, in a way that, or our friends that trying to incorporate my other children's friends into the house and just really getting to know Amos in a different way. Um,
Yeah, and there's so much I think for any of us who have, having Penny who has Down syndrome in my life has meant I've been like opened up and exposed to whether it's kids with autism or any number of other, genetic conditions and various disabilities. And I've just been aware, and I think my kids are aware of just a bigger like opportunity of humanity like and I think you're right, like there are hardships, there are challenges, and they're like, not to put too much of a bow on it, but they're really great gifts in actually getting to know each other and to be like, yeah, there are a lot of different ways to be human, and yet there's also one sense of like being human together, and it can be really beautiful.
mm. One thing about Amos's, every almost every year since COVID kind of messed us up, and then he's really been mainstreamed in the class. And
Hmm.
what had been the tradition in Edenton was like, well, you go to PE or you go to lunch or you go
Yeah.
to art. And what we discovered was those are not Amos's strong times.
Mm,
He doesn't eat in the cafeteria. It's very sensitive to noise. Again, the gym,
sure.
PE is a no-go. And art's okay. He just doesn't like it because he doesn't. But so pushing in for him with math and reading, those were kind of his
Mm,
stronger skill sets. And that was sort of new in our school system. And I said,
yeah.
let's try things. And if they don't work, then we'll start over. We'll just try. Um, and so that's been fun for the kids to see him not like, boy, Amos is really good at the trivia games, or Amos learns over in his corner. And one thing each teacher has said is, I have the nicest class. And I said, this year, I said, for 4 years, I've heard that now. And
Huh.
it just makes me wonder, are the other children like, well, there's only room for someone to be disruptive and it's going to be him. So we better just step it up a notch.
That's so interesting that you've had
Right.
that over and over again.
Over
Yeah.
and over again. I gotta let the dog out. Um, Over and over again. And I didn't, it wasn't until this year that someone in my family has turned off every light in the whole house, which is, I think,
Saving energy.
he's
Well,
really
they're
into,
they're pretending that it's not dark out yet or something.
they're trying to all be in the bed. But yeah, they hear that. And I do think like, wow, they just love him. So we're talking about guardianship tonight, and
Yeah.
this is kind of well, I mean, it's all big, and you might wonder, like, well, why did she ask me? My friend Carrie Carollo, who I wrote the book with, she has talked about, oh, look, there's Kate. She has talked about guardianship.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Kate,
Hi.
meet Amy Julia. Amy
Hi, I've
Julia.
been watching for the last 10 minutes. I was hopping out of the shower. I thought we were at 8:30 Central. So, hello.
Right.
You look great. We're so glad to see
I
you.
had to schedule my showers, so I'm clean I'm good for a few days.
You wash. It's like a big activity.
Wash my hair. Yeah, I have to like plan days ahead, and I have something on Saturday, so I'm ready.
Amy has 3 children. Her oldest child, I told you a little bit about Penny, has Down syndrome. Kate has 4 children. Her oldest, Cooper, has autism, and Cooper is 14.
He's 14. And he's currently, how do I get back to where you are? I can't see you. There we go. He is currently making his Christmas list and turning all the lights off in the house. So I just did a live video. I heard you say that about how his behaviors are always cyclical. And so now that it's getting darker earlier, he follows me around and shuts every light off, and I turn every light on.
The same thing with the frickin' lights. What is it?
He likes the glow of his iPad, I think. He's always would like, Cooper used to go in like a bathroom because there was no windows and watch his iPad. So I think it's that. But I was telling my followers, I had a whole winter once where we lived by headlamp, and it's cute and funny now, but it was not cute and funny at the time.
That's funny. Yeah, Penny she wants everything in its place, but it's not about lights. It's like the, if the nozzle on the sink is off, or or a drawer is a little bit open, but she just like goes, and I'm kind of like, great, like put it all back where it's supposed to be. That's terrific. So yeah.
How old is she? How old is Penny?
She's 19.
Okay. So she's the old. Awesome.
Yeah.
Penny finished school a year and a half ago, and tell her about the program she's in.
Yeah, so she's in a program that is kind of, provided through our town, but it's 15 minutes away. It's like in a different town, where it's on a college campus with about 30 other kids who have intellectual disabilities of some sort. And they can audit classes. Some of them are on like a path towards a college experience that would be for credit. They get support in those classes that they're taking. They also do some like basic transition skills. They have some work placements, some therapeutic stuff that happens, as well as just a lot of like social experiences. So it's pretty good.
She
lives at home. Yeah. So right now she lives at home. She's kind of assuming, and so are we, that she'll finish this either when she's 21 or 22. Okay. The law changed in Connecticut, so it's a little unclear. So she'll be there either for like this year and 1 more year, or this year and 2 more years. Anyway, and then hopefully do like a residential college program, which we're starting to look at, but thankfully it's not like imminent.
Yeah. Very cool.
Amy Julia said at the beginning, Kate, she was like, yeah, I thought we'll go look. And she was like, no. If you want to go look at Clemson Life, there are 2 days a year you can go see it.
Oh my gosh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, this was news to me. So, and then I learned, that was true at Syracuse, like at multiple places where they do open houses twice a year. I've looked at like 4 places, so there may be some that have more than 2 times a year, but it seems because the programs are small enough that I think the people who are like doing the open house days are also running the program the rest of the time. So they don't want people just like popping in. It's not like a college admissions team that's, we've got 10,000 applications, and we need people who are only doing that. This is like, you've got like 3 people who are running the program, and that includes these open house days. So that was good for me to recognize, like, oh, we got to like really start looking much sooner than I expected if we're going to be able to actually visit some places.
How people would apply to Clemson Life for a year, and how many get in?
Well, what I know about, was it Clemson Life that I looked at? I can't remember. It's either Syracuse or Clemson Life, which are similar programs, similar sized. Anyway, they take, I think they have about 100 who apply, and they take 50 and 30 come. I'm kind of making up those numbers, but it's like, but then there's some programs that are much smaller, and there's some that take everybody, or not everybody, but everybody who's, it's similar to colleges in general, where it's like, are they taking everyone who is appropriate for the program, or are they like having to make cuts because of just numbers, because they don't have enough. And I think like Clemson at this point has just gone viral so much that I feel like they're going to have to be like pretty selective. And I think there are a couple of others that are like that, but a lot of them are basically just like, look, if it's appropriate for you to be here, if you can do that and your family is supportive and we can support you, like, let's make that happen. But I'm also very much on the beginning of this part of our journey.
Right. Well, I'm excited to watch it. We'd say this. I don't know where Amos will land. Like, would he be able to live in that kind of environment? I don't know. I guess it just
I
depends.
think there's a good chance in terms of what I know of Amos, just from like following you, just in the sense that like, he growing up in a household with older siblings and the things that he is currently capable of doing independently, and the ways in which you have been able to entrust his like support to other people, like that it's not only happening in your house, it's also happening at school. And it doesn't mean he's not going to need support, that like these programs are designed to provide that. And it's also a question like, it's the Syracuse program. They've got 100 kids in the program. 50 of them live residentially on campus in dorms, and 50 of them don't. Like they live at either a parent has like actually moved to the school. Some of them do that for a semester and then they start boarding, so to speak, like, so there's a lot of flexibility, I think, in terms of how it works. And like I talked to one college, this is only a college only for students with intellectual disabilities, and they have a different housing arrangement each year because they're designed to be taking support away in an appropriate manner over the course of their time there. So I think it's like pretty cool, just in the sense of like, we recognize you need a lot of support, but we also assume that will decrease as you increase in what you're able to do, which seems really appropriate and probably would not be bad for like my typical college freshman to have something similar.
Right.
I think, Adrian, you and I have mentioned, I think, Cooper's I don't think Cooper will have the desire to learn. And I think when it comes to like a college type program, at some level, you have to want to be with your peers. You have to want to fly the nest and learn. And I think Cooper will be done. We'll be lucky if we can keep him in school till 21.
Right.
He's a challenging nut. So we'll see. But I think it's so amazing. I mean, I don't know what the future holds. I don't know.
Well, I hope the future holds more space for different types of abilities. Our co-author Carrie's son Jack is in a supported college program, and he lives now in an apartment independently, but has access to this community program. He's on schedule to graduate in 4 years. I mean, he's doing all these amazing things. So we always say, like, I think it's easier. There are more programs for Jacks than there are maybe even Penny's, Amos, Cooper's,
Yeah, I don't know any for Cooper's. And that doesn't mean they're not out there. But you said something really good, Amy. It's I'm writing a chapter in our book in my next book right now about the services and supports you can get. So Medicaid and waivers, kind of trying to touch on that. It's just so hard to find out information. I mean, like it is so hard. There was this line that was written somewhere, and it was talking about Medicaid waivers and the Katie Becker waiver. It's almost as if they purposely make it hard to find information because they don't want you to get it. That's what it feels like. And so I think I'm continuously surprised in the world of disability because I learn something new all the time. I'm like, I didn't even know that existed.
It's so weird. Like you think you know so much, and then you're like, so Penny and I went to a college fair for these programs at Syracuse University, which is in New York. So it's upstate New York. It's like 4 or 5 hours from where we live. And I was like, oh my gosh, there are going to be 40 of them. That's amazing. So as we're driving there, I did not do my homework ahead of time. I was like, as we're driving there, I print out the list, like, Penny, like, look these up on your phone. She circles 10 that she's interested in. We're going around at the college fair, and like at least half of them were commuter schools. So what that meant was like, oh, that you're in New Jersey and you must live in New Jersey in order, like, I mean, they're not residential. And And so it was just one of those things, and that was not obvious on the website. You know what I mean? Like I was like, oh, okay. So something like that. And whatever, we got there, we showed up, Clemson was there, Villanova was there, like these places where it would be residential, and which is what she's interested in. But that was another thing I learned. And then with so many things, there is such like there are distinctions state to state, which also can make it hard to get information in like this broader way. But I do think, I mean, this is also where, there are lots of reasons for all of us to be concerned about social media. One of the things that we can give great thanks for is something like what we're doing right now, where, and like when we talk about guardianship, I'll share this, but like having women in my life who are like ahead of me in this space, who I only know because of Facebook or Instagram or whatever, is invaluable, because I can say, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, can you help me? And that's where I've gotten the best information, or the best like pathway towards the information, is by actually just asking other people who are a couple of years or decades or whatever ahead of me.
What
Agreed.
brings us into why you're here tonight. Years ago, I remember you talking about guardianship, and I think I messaged you, and you said something that I had never heard before. You were like, I thought guardianship was just like this blanket thing, like going to get a driver's license. And you were like, no, you have these kind of different paths you can choose.
Mm-hmm.
Loved hearing that. I didn't know that was possible. And I don't know what is on the agenda for our family, but
Yeah.
I think it's great. I mean, I'd like to know what the options are. So tell us a little bit about Penny and guardianship in general, because we might be watching that don't have a child with a disability, and they're just here to say, well, what is guardianship?
Yeah, I mean, so this is something that is different state to state. So, in general terms, guardianship is when you have a person in your life. It might be a child. It also, I have friends who've needed to petition for guardianship over their parents for different reasons, like mental health concerns, or when you get into a situation as far as dementia, things like that. But where there is a determination that the state makes, that this person is not competent to make decisions, legal decisions for themselves. So there's like a real protection element to guardianship, of just saying, A, someone else could take advantage of you. B, you might not know how to make some decisions. I think the places we think about that the most, at least we do, are both medical. If you are in an emergency situation, would you know how to communicate what you need in that situation? And financially, like could someone take advantage of you? And can you make decisions for yourself? But
Mhm.
so there's guardianship would be, you go in front of a judge in a court with the person over whom you are like petitioning for guardianship, and that person needs to be declared incompetent, and you essentially are their competent person. And that's a legal mechanism that, Penny, in this case, if I were her guardian, could not make those decisions for herself. There's also a model that is newer called supported decision making. And there are some states that have laws that are on the books around supported decision making. Even that, I went and read some of them, and it's like Delaware's is very different than Alabama's. So if you are in a state that has supported decision making, it's worth looking it up. They're pretty easy to find, actually, online, and just seeing what does it mean in our state to have supported decision making. The problem is that our laws are not really created for group. Uh, they're created for individuals to decide things, and supported decision making still leaves the decisions in the hands of the individual. So Penny could say, "This is my supported decision making team," and that could be legal and legally asserted, and still she would ultimately be the person making the decision, and she could disregard what her supported decision making team is advising her to do. There's also some states that don't have supported decision making, and Connecticut is one of those. So what we have done is something called power of attorney. So we have medical power of attorney and we have financial power of attorney, and Penny granted us that. So she has to be able to say, I want my mom and dad to be a part of my medical and my financial decisions. So she's still, I mean, if she were right now to say, I don't want that anymore, technically, legally, she could do that. Whereas if we had gotten guardianship, she would have no recourse. Like she has no legal decision making left and for the rest of her life, which is part of why we haven't done that. Is just to say, we're going to stretch out your competency and your decision making as long as we think it is like safe for you. And we're going to risk, I mean, she's still under like slightly more risk on some level because of that, if she were in some sort of emergency situation. But she also is protected from us being kind of overly domineering, like taking too much control over her life because she's quite competent in lots of ways. Like I couldn't imagine in her case standing up in front of a judge and saying she's not competent because she's very competent. But does she need us to support her a lot when it comes to lots of things? Yes. And so we've done the power of attorney route, at least for the time being.
So tell me something, is guardianship, I know you said it's different state to state, so that helps people know, okay, well, the first thing I need to do is say, well, I live in North Carolina, I'm going to look, Kate's in Minnesota. Is it something you do every year? Is it permanent? How does that work?
Guardianship is permanent. So, technically someone could essentially, people might remember like Britney Spears, like can basically say this person I don't need a guardian anymore. So technically that can happen, but it's hard. It's depending on the diagnosis of your child, it can be hard to get guardianship. But if you've got like a determination of IQ, there's certain things that probably for many of, if you've got Down syndrome and an IQ determination, it would not be hard for me to get guardianship. But it would be hard to undo that. And I think that's the whole idea of like having the language of like education in the least restrictive environment. To me, that applies here where it's like, okay, decision making in the least restrictive environment. It doesn't mean that there are never going to be restrictions on Penny's decision making that are like appropriate for her. It also means I'm going to like err on the side of giving her a little more freedom because of just respecting her autonomy. I don't know, I may have said this, Adrienne, to you at some point before, but just the idea of like the dignity of risk, like of letting our kids make mistakes and of, getting themselves in trouble. But of course, in the same way that like you would never let a toddler be like, oh yeah, there's no fence and there are lots of Mack trucks and driving on the road out front. Why don't you go play in the front yard? Like you just wouldn't do that. That's not dignity of risk. That's just negligence. And so similarly, we have to really use discernment to know, am I letting you take appropriate risks and make appropriate mistakes? Or am I like throwing you into, rushing traffic with no ability to get out of the way?
Tell me a little bit about, that's really helpful. Tell me a little bit about where Penny, how does she manage? What is she able to manage pretty well? Or what are you allowing her to manage?
That's a great question. I mean, so she is very able to manage her own like daily schedule. She sets an alarm and she wakes up and she gets herself ready in the morning. And this year's new thing has been like calling in her own prescriptions. Or we're trying, she doesn't always, but she can do her own laundry. There are a couple things she can cook, so it's a lot of like daily living skills and tasks. And at school, they do some work on like budgeting. She has a debit card. I would not say she has a great concept of money, however. So that is not an area where I feel like I don't know that she ever would be. She can certainly look at, this is how much is in my bank account, and therefore I only have that much to spend. And she can understand that. But it's like a very immediate and concrete something that she can understand, rather than like, oh, I'm going to save for the future because I want to, buy a house one day or something, which she's not thinking about. And then similarly, I think she is very able, like we have like a feelings chart in our kitchen, and she is definitely able to say, here's how I'm feeling. If she can't articulate something with her words, like she can usually write about it. She's like she writes more than she wants to speak if it's something that's hard, we've learned. And so she will do that. So again, when it comes to some of the more like if she's in pain, so if that's like a physical thing or an emotional thing, she can communicate about that, but it does take some awareness on my part to help that happen. So it's not something that I mean, anyone who's kind of a trusted adult in her life, she would be able to do that with. But a stranger, like a doctor she's never met before, I don't know that she could communicate what's needed to be communicated there. So that's where again there's a little bit of like a gray area. Yeah. So she's again very capable and competent in lots of ways. And at the same time, like I had a friend who doesn't know Penny in person, just kind of chats with me, and she the other day was like, "Oh yeah, so I mean Penny's 19, she's driving now." And I was like, "Oh no." Like
I was going to ask that. Can she drive?
no. And she will never, she's like, "I have no interest in driving." She's like, "I don't even like riding a bike. It's too fast. Like, I don't want to do it." But she also, it wouldn't be safe. Like her processing is slow. And so literally it's like, if we're having a conversation where she has to think about something, it's definitely like I'm like, okay, just wait and wait and wait. And she will respond, but it is like what will feel like excruciatingly long to me. And that would not work in a car situation where it's like, what do I do at that unusual object running towards me? It's like, no, don't get behind the wheel.
What about voting? Can she vote?
She can vote. She voted in the last presidential election. And that was exciting. I mean, it was an exciting thing to like get her, registered to vote and try to give her some information about the decisions that she might want to, make and why she might want to do that. So yeah, she can vote.
So I have a question because Minnesota is a very, our slogan is "My Life, My Choices." So we are very pro disability in Minnesota. It is one of our, we stand for disability here. And I tended to think about guardianship and the different levels. So and they want to start with the least restrictive, exactly what you're saying. It's so awesome. So my question was someone like Penny, what if she, and again, this can happen with any child. So, but what if she was at college and met someone that convinced her to want to drive? Like our friend Carrie, her son, Jack, he has some very convincing, hold on. Sorry. Oh my gosh. He has some very convincing friends. So how would you handle that in your situation with her?
So I think, that is exactly the right question. And like a lot of it has to do with when there may be a time at which we say the appropriate thing is for us to become her guardians. Although honestly, if we were her guardians and she was at college and she had friends who wanted to convince her to drive, they would do that anyway. Like it would change their ability to convince her to like put a down payment on a house, like to take advantage of her in like a financial way.
Right.
But I don't think it would protect her from making rash decisions if we weren't there.
Got it. Like, is it really?
Yeah. So I think some of it has to do with the decisions we make about the situations that we entrust them into, the people they're around. She got into a situation at school this year where there was a boy who they didn't realize that their emails through the school system would be seen by administrators. And she had a boyfriend and he was, talking about things that he thought they should try to sneak away and do. And she was responding and, thankfully the school was on it and they called us and we had conversations and Penny was like, I did not know I was agreeing to that. Like that, so it was a good, and that felt very much like just like a human interaction, like it's like, yeah, she's young and she's figuring this out with a boy and we get to be a part of that and the school was on it. And but I took her to Syracuse. There are 15,000 undergraduates and I'm like, oh my gosh, like my little child, like she's 4'6", like how would she be on this campus? I don't know, so, but I also have to be really careful not to be, I think we can really be like overprotective helicopter parents who also have real reasons to be aware of our kids' vulnerabilities. And I don't know quite what the answer is there. But it's like a similar thing to our other kids. It's just magnified, where like with all of our kids, we're like, do I let you go to that party? Do I like let you, like there's so many questions like that where it's like, how much do I trust you? And how much do I even not trust you and know that you're going to make a mistake? And that's part of what it means for you to grow up,
Mhm.
So
Dr. Temple Grandin talks a lot about, she's an autistic,
yeah.
So she talks a lot about, I've heard her speak about letting autistic teens go into a gas station alone, go into a grocery store alone, start, and we aren't able to do that with Cooper's vulnerabilities, but I've always tried to look for ways that I can let him be as he can. So I love that you said that. Like at some point we have to let them fail at certain, I think that's so great.
Our kids went to a Montessori school, not Penny, but our other two for a long time. And one of the things their like head of school always asked was, what is one thing you are doing for your child that they could do for themselves?
Oh.
And what is one thing that you're doing for your child that they almost could do for themselves? And I find that so helpful, including with my older kids now. I mean, they were talking about like, oh, you're tying their shoes and they could, but I think for my 14-year-old, that's helpful. Like, what am I doing for her that she's actually ready to learn? Because you don't want to be like, what's something that they're not anywhere close to being able to do for themselves? Let's make them do that. Like that's not helpful at all. But like just that next step into the next thing is like really empowering for them. It helps build trust. Again, it helps them make mistakes and realize that like I can make a mistake and then learn something. Yeah. So I find that very, very helpful in thinking about each of my kids, but about Penny as well, where it's just like the other day, we're trying to arrange a time for people from her program in college to get together. It's all local people and go bowling. And so I was like, Pen, I think you should help me set this up. Like, I don't need to be the one organizing the college kids who go do this thing. You can organize that. I'll help you. So she calls the bowling alley. And she's not, I mean, none of my teenagers are great on the phone because they don't do phones anymore. But so she's like talking to this guy. She's not, I think she's easy to understand. Apparently he did not, so she's having this conversation with him about reserving bowling lanes. And it was hard. And I did have to jump in, but I also was like, this is good. Like you are learning how to actually have a conversation with someone who can't see you, doesn't know that you have a disability, doesn't understand what you're saying. And you have to kind of figure out how to handle that. But I'm also going to jump in at a certain point and make sure that you're not just flailing in this situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think Adrian and I recently visited this phenomenal group home in Florida. For Autism organization. And I think you too, Adrian, it really just got me thinking about Cooper living semi-independently under the care of other people. And I want him to be able to do as much as he possibly can so they don't have to. And not even in the sense that they shouldn't have to, but I just think less opportunity for things to go wrong or go awry. Like if he can bathe himself, if he can dress himself, if he can potty and all things, I want him to know how to do it.
Yeah. And I think for all of us, like for me, this whole, I don't know, every one of us have limitations and we all have possibilities. And I think we kind of sometimes we overstate the limitations on our kids with disabilities and underestimate the possibilities, but there's always a balance and there's always a line. And so it empowers them and it gives them a sense of like who they are becoming when they can learn things. But we also are not trying to pretend that they're just like our typical kids and there's no area where or that it's bad for them to need support or encouragement or like for us to be needy humans is not a bad thing. And we want our kids to know that. But for us to be capable humans is also not a bad thing. And we want our kids to know that.
Well, and when you said, Amy Julia, I don't know if this was your reaction, Kate, when you said, you get up in a court and you say this person is incompetent, and that like just makes me want to cry.
I mean, I couldn't do it.
And I know that Cooper and Amos have different needs. Cooper even more than Amos, but it's like I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I could do that, or I don't want to do that. Boy, I hate that the process is that way, but it's making me think, well, if guardianship really maybe should be used that way, what are these other options that we can use? And is guardianship really gonna, I don't know, I've always wondered, like, what difference would it make if you have the medical and financial power of attorney? I don't know what guardianship, I don't know what the benefit of it would be.
I think the benefits are there are two that I can think of because I feel similarly to you, Adrian. One is if Peter and I get hit by a bus, then if we were her guardians, it is already clear that she needs a guardian. Like that just kind of goes to either the next person who we've assigned or the court can actually assign a guardian. And so there's just a degree of protection in the case of like catastrophe that for some people that's important. I think especially if you have aging parents or there just might be a situation where that makes a lot of sense. There also are people who it is in terms of just what the limitations are for them. They need to know that they've got that they've got somebody who really is able to make those decisions on their behalf. I definitely, when I was in the process of making this decision, I mentioned that I think it was actually on Facebook. I mentioned on Facebook, I'm thinking about this, and I had two women, neither of whom I've ever met in real life, who are both have kids about 5 years older than Penny. One had petitioned for guardianship, one had not. And they both were like, I would love to have a phone call with you and just tell you how we thought this through. I don't think there's one right answer. I think there are good questions to ask. Like, here's how we did it. And they were both so gracious and generous. And I was so grateful for that. So I do think for all of us, finding someone ideally in our own state who can talk us through why I did this or why I didn't can be really helpful. I think the other reason why guardianship can be helpful is just in the if you're in a living situation where your kid is just at greater risk for whatever reason of being taken advantage of. Right now with Penny living under our roof, she doesn't drive. Like who can mess with her? Like I trust the people at school. I trust the people in our community. Like she is not in a vulnerable situation. Could she find herself there? Sure. But it's unlikely, and giving her that sense of like competency seems pretty important too. So that's where we landed.
But if you had guardianship and Penny has a debit card, you being her guardian doesn't prohibit her from handing the debit card over or pulling out all the money and giving it to somebody else, right?
Correct. It's more that it would like and the same is true with me having like financial power of attorney. So we've put that, it's more, and honestly, our kids with disabilities, like they can't have money in their name anyway. So, but the idea is that someone can't get her to sign a lease with them if she were to have an ABLE account that had $50,000 in it, which she doesn't. But if she, after a couple of years, she had a job, she was able to save some money, like for someone to take advantage of that it's more that type of thing than it is like, sure, she could lose her $300 and that would be a bummer. But it also, that to me is like a reasonable risk to take in terms of her being able to go to the mall and buy herself a shirt,
Right.
Yeah.
Huh. That's really interesting. Yeah, the able count, like Amos, yeah, he could, I guess he would be totally taken advantage of. And Cooper would too. If he just wouldn't know enough to even know to say, where Penny could kind of think through, like, that doesn't, I might need
You
to.
would probably know that didn't feel right. I don't know, but I think, but in terms of like, can people convince her to do things that are not the right thing? Yes, like pretty easily, So I think that, but honestly, again, there might be other mechanisms that protect her from that don't have to be guardianship, So that's more what I'm looking for. And also like trying to set up her life in such a way that she really is with trusted people. And again, that's where it is possible that as she goes farther from home, like I think she would like to, and I think this would be good, like live with her peers long term. Whatever that situation ends up being, there may be a place for us where it's like, you know what, if you're going to do that, that's great. But like, again, we're not going to have you signing the lease on an apartment. And therefore we need to, get a higher level of kind of control in your life. But we haven't crossed that bridge, and it probably will be a while before we do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
That's really good. When do Kate and I need to start like really thinking and diving into this process? What age?
I mean, I started probably thinking about it when Penny was 16. And then I would say when she was 17 is when I actually started doing something about it, in terms of having some of these conversations. And, and I also called the probate court in Connecticut and just was like, talk to me about this. Because Connecticut also has guardianship and conservatorship. And I was like, are they the same thing? Are they different things? What do they mean? So yeah, just trying to like puzzle through I just need to even try to understand this, and talking to a couple people. And then because we decided we weren't going to do guardianship, which is a longer process as far as like you have to actually go to court and you need a lawyer, we did get a lawyer who drew up papers to become the financial power of attorney and the medical power of attorney. And we did that like on Penny's 18th birthday, because you really do. So whatever you have in place, you want to have something in place on the 18th birthday that provides some measure of protection for your child. I don't think it's important, even if you do intend to become their guardian, for that to be in place on the 18th birthday specifically, because if you've got the power of attorney stuff, that just kind of takes care of the immediate emergency situation that might happen. And if you 3 months later petition for guardian, fine. Especially if your child is still living in your house and you are largely the people who are in their lives. But I would think if you want guardianship, you're going to want to do that as, close to the 18th birthday as you can. But I think regardless, you want something on the 18th birthday that establishes whatever degree of support and like legal control as you need.
Yeah, the ones that my friends talk about is you lose access to their medical records at 18. And so we lost access to Cooper's medical stuff at 14 through children's system. And so on his 14th birthday, they wouldn't talk to me anymore. And they're like, well, can you put him on the phone? And I was like, well,
No.
I guess I could like have him grunt. Like I got real mad. Like I couldn't get his meds. I couldn't get anything. And to get someone at the front desk to understand what a proxy was, to have it mailed out for me to sign. So I lost access to his stuff for about a week. And I was like a panicked wreck because no one.
Exactly.
So I tell everyone, and so I want to be clear, Cooper's not on life-saving meds, but I know people whose kids are. So like 18 is a big one.
Right. And that's my friend who is a lawyer who has a daughter with Down syndrome and done all of this. She was just like, no, on like her 18th birthday, which is December 30th, it's not a very convenient time to be signing papers. She was like, no, we're signing them on December 30th. I don't like, this is for exactly that reason. And Penny similarly is not on life-saving meds, but she just was like, we are not letting a day go by where you could not be with her in an emergency situation talking to a doctor. Like that's not happening. So I do think that's really important. And obviously, good point that state to state, that might be different than 18, because in Connecticut it's 18.
Well, so it's just this one, as far as I know, this one children's hospital. It's Gillette. No one talks about it, because if it was like my typical 12-year-old and let's say he was 14, he'd just be like, yeah, talk to my mom. Like that's all they need is just him to say it.
Got it. But I think in California, I think there's something like that, like now that because I remember my friend being like, what do you mean? Like, and again, her kid was able to just say, yeah, talk to my mom. But so I do think there are some states that give
North Carolina.
Okay.
Oh, you okay?
No, I said North Carolina is like that. I had to, but the problem is I had to do it with my teenagers. I don't know if it's 14. I can go into the portal and give permission for myself. Basically, I guess they assume that these children are going to like set up their portals,
Right.
So I'm like, yeah, I couldn't do that because Cooper, long story short, but he didn't have an email. So I never had set him up on the portal. Like there was all different, it was like a perfect storm that you don't prepare for. And then it's all of a sudden, poof.
Right. I think Amos now I'm supposed to have done something, but I mean, that's Amy Julia grew up in Edenton, Kate, where I live. And Kate is always like, Kate has not been to Edenton yet. I want her, like, she's not sure it's a real place.
It kind of feels like maybe not a real place, but it really is.
But yeah, it's everything for me with it always feels so stressful. Like it feels like it's like 0 or 100 with when it comes to Cooper's care. It's like, or school, it's like it's either good or it's terrible. Like everything. High stress.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that obviously sounds like a super stressful week. And, I think obviously a lot of times things do work out just fine, but you just want to be prepared for the things that, as we all know, things can also go wrong in very unexpected ways.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking time out of your busy day.
Well, thanks for having me. I love talking with both of you. Yeah.
You're in Connecticut now?
Connecticut. Yeah.
So one of my favorite keynotes I ever did was at a school district in Connecticut, and we would call it a freeway here, but it was the scariest road I've ever driven on in my entire life.
I wonder which one it was.
I was stopped, and I've driven everywhere. I was stopped for 3 hours. I'm not lying. And when I made it to the front, there were like chalk outlines of like people on and when I got to where I was going, like someone dies every day on that road. And I was like, what? Yeah, Carrie knew what it was. Carrie, because she from New Hampshire, she knew exactly what I was talking about.
Well, apparently I'm in denial about the road conditions in my state.
Oh my gosh. So I will not do it again. I'll drive anywhere but there. I was so scared.
And Amy Julia, what do you have in your professional docket right now? What are you working on?
I'm working on a book proposal, so that's exciting. I have a new podcast called Take the Next Step, which I'll probably be calling you all to be on at some point. It is for parents of children with disabilities. And it's like 20-minute episodes that are based on 3 ideas that we, as families, can start with delight instead of deficit, connect with community, and take the next step towards a good future. So trying to deal with like the idea of being overlooked, isolated, and just overwhelmed by how many things we need to do. Like, okay, well, what's the one next step? Like, so talking to other parents as well as like therapists and experts in the field in terms of really trying to be giving meaningful and manageable ways for disability parents to move forward and with a sense of like hope and promise without it being a toxic positivity podcast. So Take the Next Step is probably the biggest thing, but I'm working on a book that's related to that idea as well.
Do you have other books too?
I do, yeah. I mean, the book that's the most like directly disability related was a memoir that came out in 2011 called A Good and Perfect Gift. So that's like the story of Penny's birth and what it took for me to receive her as a gift. And then I wrote a book called Small Talk, which is more of a parenting memoir. And then one called White Picket Fences. That's the one that has the most to do with Edenton, where I grew up, but it's about like race and class and disability, and just what does it mean to kind of deal with social divisions. And then I had a book called To Be Made Well, which is about healing in both the like personal and social sense, that came out a couple of years ago.
4 books, Adrienne. She's schooling us. We got to get moving, girl.
Adrienne just wrote one book with people. That's
you wrote a great book. I reference it. I really enjoyed it.
Tiring. I'm writing one right now, and whenever I have even though it's not due till June, I get real angsty. It really changes my whole kind of demeanor.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, that is a terrible feeling. I don't know how you begin so quickly.
Like I always like it'd be different if I was like at my beachside home, like writing by the waves and the water. Like I am like writing at dance class and then going to the hockey rink, and I'm like,
no, that's impressive. I don't ever do that, which is probably why I have a book come out once every like 4 years. So
I get that too. Yes. Well, nice meeting you. I'm so
thanks. It's so nice to be with you all both. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank y'all. Sorry, Kate, that I messed you up on the time.
You know, I should have known. You tend to trick me.
I trick you. Thank y'all.
Okay, bye, guys.
Bye.